Words. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be doing my fourth quarter book haul for the end of 2023. Alright, before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is a book that you got over the holidays and you're really excited to read. Alright, so this book haul definitely isn't as bad as my third quarter, but it's still rivaling it. And you know, one thing I will say about this is you're not breaking your book buying ban if most of the books are gifts, which is what happened here. Got birthday, got Christmas. Thank you so much to the wonderful people who added to my TBR without making me buy the books myself. But ironically, starting right out, the first one I did actually buy for myself when I had a bingo on my broke bingo board thing. So How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. This one I picked up from half price after I saw it because I loved Denise Williams' Fastest Way to Fall. It was actually one of my best books for 2023, so I'll put a link to that in the cards. I believe this is kind of serious, in which we're following this woman who's like a big overachiever and has recently gotten out of an abusive relationship. She started trying to let off steam and goes out, has a one-night stand, but ends up actually really liking the guy. I think somehow he is tied to her job or something, and it's actually like maybe not taboo but frowned upon. So then I think their relationship also starts to affect her position or something like that. So I'm very hopeful to get to this one and that I will love it as well. So next one is one that I technically did buy for myself, but I don't really constitute it that because it's a book subscription. Those are a little different. Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. This one I was very excited to get my hands on, as this was my first Evernight book, which is a subscription program that Lukrembo hosts for horror books, and I believe it runs every 3 months. That sounds right. I was very hesitant. I've always been very hesitant to sign up for book subscription boxes, particularly when you have no say in what the book is and you're not really sure what it's going to be when you receive it. This is horror specific, and that is a genre that I'm wanting to pay more attention to. Usually the books that are picked through Lukrembo tend to be fairly popular, so I thought this would be a good idea to kind of dip my toe more into the horror genre, but also ensure that the books I'm picking up are pretty popular, hopefully get pretty positive reviews, and they're beautiful. So this is the gorgeous new dust jacket, that's the word. Then we have these beautiful sprayed edges that I'm just absolutely in love with. We have some end papers, and that is actually where you can see that I believe this is a story talking about doppelgangers. I think the main character finds this doppelganger after discovering this door that appears like in her research lab. Fairly certain is to a different dimension. I'm not really sure. I've heard very, very mixed things about this so far, and Caitlin Starling's work across the board I've heard really mixed things on. This book is beautiful, so one way or another, I'm going to read it. Hopefully I will love it so I can display it on my shelves, because it's so creepily gorgeous, and I am in love. I think the next one actually is supposed to be coming out this month, so can't wait for that. Then we're diving into the books that I received for my birthday. So first up is The Spirit Bares Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White, which I received from Paige at the PM Reader. She's so kind. I absolutely love her. Putting a link to her in the description. Please go follow. This is the newest by the author who wrote Hell Followed With Us, which I was in love with 2 years ago. And I believe this is following a trans boy whose family are all mediums. But unfortunately, after a failed attempt at an arranged marriage, he is then diagnosed with veil sickness, a mysterious disease sending violent-eyed women into madness, and then shipped off to a finishing school and sanatorium. I've heard literally only positive things about this so far. Another cover that is absolutely beautiful, but also very eerie and creepy. I cannot wait to get into this one, so thank you so much again, Paige. I'm very excited for it. My wonderful best friend Kat bought me *Twice Shy* by Sarah Hogle, which is very ironic because I actually annotated a copy for her 3 years ago, somewhere around there. And I told her how I annotated my copy to give to her, so I wanted a copy for my own shelves again. This one is really cute. It has a bit of a silly setup, which I definitely think is sort of Sarah Hogle's thing. We're following a woman who ends up inheriting the house from her great aunt, I believe, but it is also left to the groundskeeper, whose pictures were actually used to catfish the female main character previously. The two of them end up cohabitating in the guest house and trying to fix up this mansion because unfortunately I think her great aunt was like a hoarder, if I remember correctly, and both of them have very, very different plans for what this house is going to become. But along the line, they end up talking to each other through these notes left around the house and in letters. It's so freaking cute. It's so sweet. This is like tooth-achingly sweet, and I can't wait to reread this one and annotate the crap out of it. Josh kindly bought me a copy of Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. As you can see, I've since read it and annotated it back at the end of October. If you've somehow not heard about this, it is a retelling of Dracula focusing on his brides. It is told in this epistolary format from the first bride, Constanta. Oh, the themes that go on in this book are just so beautifully handled, so smart and well nuanced. There's so much in this book that I really adore. I love the development of Constanta's character, the little moments of rage you feel from her. It's just, and the writing itself is absolutely stunningly beautiful. So was over the moon that he bought this for me. He also very kindly bought me Raven Song by T.J. Klune, the second book in the Green Creek series, with these gorgeous new covers. This one is my favorite, so it's really hard for me to not automatically pick it up and start annotating. Gordo is my favorite sort of character, a grumpy asshole with a heart of gold, and especially having just recently reread Wolfsong. Rereading this series, I can tell I'm gonna pick up on these little cues between the couples so much more, because the tiniest moments that happen in Wolfsong between the couple that this book is about had me squealing, dying, kicking my feet. I love them so freaking much, and I can't wait to reread this. I think these next few were from my mom. So first, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is one I've been wanting to read for quite some time, so she did very well. I believe the writing is pretty lyrical and lush, but also very fairy tale-esque, and I think the basis of the story is in Russian folklore, which is something, of course, right up my alley. Folklore, fairy tales, myths, all that sort of stuff, I'm interested immediately. I have heard pretty much only positive things about the series across the board, so I'm hoping I will pick it up here soon. It is pretty perfect for winter time, but it is the start of a trilogy, so I have to get over my fear of starting series first before I pick this up. Then, one that I cannot wait. My mom told me she saw the title of this and had to buy it for me. Unlikable female characters, words. Unlikable female characters, the women pop culture wants you to hate by Anna Bugatuskaya? I'm so sorry I butchered that. This was also on my TBR already, and I'll read you the blurb that really had me intrigued. How bitches, train wrecks, shrews, and crazy women have taken over pop culture and liberated women from having to be nice. Immediately made me think of Rebecca Bunch from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I love that.
She's the coolest girl in the world. Wait, wrong, Rebecca.
I can't wait to get into this. One of my favorite things to read about in nonfiction, discussions and commentary on media and how we are influenced by media and how we also influence media. It's just a topic I find very fascinating, so I can't wait to get into this one, particularly since it's tying in some like feminist themes. I'm so excited. Finally, my mom grabbed me The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. This one, she saw the cover and just thought it sounded really interesting and made me promise to lend it to my dad because she thinks he'll like it too. I've never actually read the back here, but this does sound really interesting. Stefan Breitweister is the most prolific art thief of all time. He pulled off more than 200 heists, often in crowded museums in broad daylight. His girlfriend served as his accomplice. His collection was worth an estimated $2 billion. He never sold a piece, displaying his stolen art in his attic bedroom. He felt like a king until everything came to a shocking end. I know Jan recently read this and she gave it 4 stars. She gave me that heads up. I'm very excited to get into it. It sounds like it's going to be a really interesting nonfiction read. The final of my birthday presents was from my friend Allie, A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, which is her newest YA book that I cannot wait to get into. I've heard this described as very light academia with fantastical elements, in which we're following this girl, Effie, who is a member of, I think it's like the architectural college, but she really wants to be in the literature college. But of course, this world and the society does not allow women to study literature. But one day she gets the opportunity to go to remodel her favorite author's home. And whilst there, she ends up meeting a boy from the literature college who is working to prove that her favorite author is actually a fraud. I think Allie gave this 5 stars, and I'm pretty sure this is the one she annotated for me. Yes, it is, because this sort of acted as both my Christmas and birthday present at first. So she put in here, Merry Birthday Christmas, love Allie. And it still makes me chuckle. Ava Reed tends to have some very heavy themes in their stories. I love religious discussions that take place, and I have recently heard that apparently there are a little bit of those here as well, so it's it's making me more excited. Finally, at least in the stack, are my 2 book of the months that I got recently. So the first one, Lone Woman by Victor Lavalle. This one is a horror book that I believe is following this woman who is traveling to Montana with this trunk. Yes, it is 1915 and she is on her way to become a homesteader. I've heard that like the first half of this book is really interesting, but the latter half kind of loses steam. This is another horror book that I wanted to add to my shelves because, like I mentioned, it's a genre that I really want to start paying more attention to. Finally, we have 𝗖cie House by 𝗖cie RH/, which I have ranted about many a times. This was on my worst books of the year. This was following a woman who lives in this really small town in Kentucky and has always been drawn to the 𝗖cie House and eventually ends up getting a job there, but gets a lot more than she's expecting. The writing is really pretty and the house itself is very interesting as far as like a character, and the characters themselves and the plot were not for me. This is also in my unhaul portion of the video, which we're gonna get to later on. So now we are gonna get into my Christmas presents, which is also a lot. Starting at the top, I got many nonfiction books from Josh. He got me She Found It at the Movies, Women Writers on Sex, Desire, and Cinema. Oh, it's a collection of essays. Oh, I didn't actually realize that. Edited by Christina Newland. As I said, I love reading about media and how it influences our society, how we influence it. So another one that I'm really fascinated by, particularly looking at women and their sexuality and that role it plays in cinema. Can't wait for it. He also got me The Geek Feminist Revolution by Cameron Hurley. The title of this one alone was enough for me to put it on my TBR. I don't know if I've ever looked into what it's really about. Cameron Hurley writes with passion and conviction on feminism, geek culture, and the impact of women in science fiction and fantasy, and the diversification of publishing. Love it. We also have Women and Other Monsters, Building a New Mythology by Jess Zimmerman. This one I added because of the cover. It is stunning. But again, title, commentary on feminism, and then looking at mythology, perfect for me. The folklore that has shaped our dominant culture teems with frightening female creatures. In our language and our stories, many written by men, we underline the idea that women who step out of bounds, who are angry or greedy or ambitious, who are overtly sexual or not sexy enough, aren't just outside the norm. They're unnatural, morally deformed, monstrous. So this and unlikable female characters actually would work very well together. I might have like an ongoing theme for a video there. Also, just weird, cool thing. Josh bought this for me, I assume used, because it says it was in the Library of Congress. That's awesome. Finally, for the nonfiction books, he grabbed me Queer Body Power and Finding Your Body Positivity by 𝗖cie Dennis. This is another one where the very simplistic but colorful cover caught my eye. Another topic that I really enjoy reading about, the influence that media and society can have on the views people have on their own bodies, beauty standards, body image, body positivity, all that sort of stuff. So another one where the topic just was perfectly up my alley, and I really can't wait to look into this, especially looking at the intersectionality between people who are queer and body image. That's a cross-section that I've never really thought about before, and so I think this would be really interesting to read up on. Next up is one I'm very excited for, A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. Destiny from Jan Agaton's Patreon Discord was kind enough to buy this for me. I adore them, and the more we talk about books, the more I've come to find that we seem to have very similar taste. This one I heard Jess at Books Past Bedtime praising and immediately added it to my TBR. It's a queer fantasy that has a very strong romance story going on. Oh, so we are following a man who is attracted to men, but unfortunately was set up into an arranged marriage with a woman, but when his attraction to men is revealed, rather than it completely ruining this diplomatic union, the neighboring country decides to instead have him marry his former intended's brother. That's right, this reminded me of Winter's Orbit with the arranged marriage aspect of the story. I'm very excited to get into this, and the cover is stunning. I can't wait for it. Next up, I received Wrath Becomes Her by Aiden Palidoros from, this one was from M. Yes, M, who is also in Jan Agaton's Layer Patreon. I've made many friends in Layer, and we did a wishlist exchange on the Discord, so that's kind of how this happened. But this one I know I wanted to read because it is supposed to be Frankenstein mixed with Jewish folklore, where the female main character becomes like a golem. Oh, that's right. It's also set in Lithuania, 1943, because the Frankenstein, her father was actually trying to bring her back to life. She had been killed by the Nazis. So Got some historical fantasy elements going on here. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. Also, this cover is just stunning. I saw it on NetGalley and requested a copy, but was not lucky enough to get one, so thank you again to Em for buying this for me. Also from the layer, Brienne bought me The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. I adored Cemetery Boys, so I've been wanting to get to more of Aiden Thomas's work. And this one I've heard is supposed to be kind of like Hunger Games with Percy Jackson, and that was immediately enough to pique my interest. I do believe our male main character is trans, and I think there might also be some influence from Mexico as well as possibly indigenous cultures. I'm not really sure, but I am very excited to get to it, especially when we see this gorgeous map. I think this is a duology, and I'm pretty sure the second book is going to be coming out this year. My friend Kat annotated for me The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I think she's a witch who performs on YouTube. The whole bit is that she actually is a witch, but you know, most people are just thinking that it's all tricks and editing. However, she ends up getting a letter from somebody offering for her to be a teacher to these witch children, and then I think there's a little bit of a romance with the grumpy librarian. I think the author is also writing us, maybe not a second book, but like a book with similar vibes as this that's coming out this year as well. So I'm really intrigued to try it out. I've heard great found family feels. It sounds perfectly up my alley. And then of course with Kat's annotations, it's just gonna be a really fun reading time. Ray at Bookmark Chronicles was kind enough to send me Fence Volume 2 by 𝗖cie his𝗁𝗁𝗁, illustrated by Joanne the Bad. This is a sports YA contemporary with a bit of romance story that I've been really enjoying. I own 1 and 4. Which is ridiculous. 6 comes out in January though, and I cannot wait for that. I love seeing the development of these two main characters in particular's relationship. When things start, they absolutely detest each other. Nicholas is determined to beat 𝗖cie, no matter what the cost, but by this point in the series where I am, they're actually kind of becoming friends. They are currently roommates also, so that just adds to the dynamic. It makes it so much more fun. From the layer as well, Ashlyn was kind enough to send me Disfigured on Fairy Tales, Disability, and Making Space by Amanda Leduc, another nonfiction book looking at specifically how the viewing of disabled people in fairy tales impacts society and our view of disabled people. I've heard pretty positive things about this one. It's just been a minute since I've heard anybody review it, but I'm very excited to get into it. Final one from the layer, Jessie was kind enough to buy me Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. This is something I've been wanting to read since it came out. I requested a copy from my library. I was on hold for it, and it never came in because apparently the person before me never returned it. And unfortunately, my library has yet to buy a second copy as far as I'm aware. This one I think is following a young girl who actually was raised on the moon by her mother, but she is not supposed to be there. And then when it is discovered, she ends up being taken to the Celestial Kingdom. Yes, and I think she ends up learning alongside the Emperor's son, and some feelings begin to grow, but at the same time, she is trying to save her mother, and I think his father was the one responsible for putting her on the moon. I've heard the writing in this is very beautiful, and I think this one is also inspired by Chinese mythology, so I can't wait to get to it. Thank you to Jessie. My friend Ali bought me The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. I'm so sorry, I've never actually tried to pronounce that one out loud, but this one I believe is supposed to be a retelling of Loki and Angrboda, another name that I probably just butchered. Norse mythology is the basis for this one, and I have been really interested in it. I've heard pretty positive things, but I haven't heard a lot of thoughts on this overall. I'm fairly certain Allie bought this for me, so I could read it and then tell her my opinion and whether or not I think she would like it. That sort of tends to be the reason she buys me books, but I'm not complaining. Next, The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one, Paige at the PM Reader bought me this one for Christmas. Thank you so much, Paige. You're the best. So this kind of sounds like, oh shoot, what's the name of the movie? It has Reese Witherspoon and Mark Ruffalo, and like he's a ghost in her apartment, and there's a bit of a romance that happens. That is exactly what I thought of every time somebody told me the synopsis for this book. I've yet to actually pick any of Poston's romance books up, but I've been very intrigued by them. They all have a bit of a magical realism element to the story that I think is very interesting. And with this one, I believe it's that this author parent has recently passed, and her parents apparently owned a funeral parlor, and she's gone home, but whilst there, she ends up seeing the ghost of her editor. I'm not really sure how that's gonna go, but I'm interested. Oh my gosh, my foot keeps falling asleep. Next up, Robin at Robin Reads bought me The Hollow Places by 𝗖cie his𝘁, and she said specifically that she wants me to read this and tell her whether I think she'll like it or not. I've been wanting to pick this up ever since somebody likened it to Gravity Falls.
Finally, a good reason to punch a teenager in the face. Let's roll. Road safety laws, prepare to be ignored.
I mean, I love Gravity Falls. Adult horror Gravity Falls, I'm even more in. 𝗖cie his𝘁 is also an author whose work I've just really been interested in trying. It seems as though they tend to go back and forth between like fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. I'm so interested to see some of their work. A lot of their books, the idea behind them sound fantastic. I've just not actually picked any of them up. We are nearing the end of the stack. My cousin did very well. She really did, because she bought me The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I have read this book and I do love it. I just unfortunately do already own a copy, but I'm not complaining because this paperback copy is really beautiful. These little flaps that I tend to think are really unnecessary in paperback books, but I will admit the little detailing with the quotes on them, pretty gorgeous. If you somehow don't know what Addie is about, Addie makes a deal with this evil god. That deal was to try and get out of being married and being forced into a life that she did not want. Unfortunately though, that deal ends up resulting in her managing to live forever, except no one will ever remember her. And while it does have its issues, it is a very beautiful story with some really gorgeous writing that I very much enjoyed. So this is one that I also want to reread at some point, because I'm sure well, my other book is annotated, but the process of annotating it is not nearly as clean as I do now, so I want to reread it and redo that whole process. My cousin also grabbed me Light from Uncommon Stars by 𝗖cie. When I saw TJ Klune blurbing it on the front, I was immediately interested. Shizuka Satomi, who made a deal with the devil to escape damnation, she must entice 7 other violin prodigies to trade their souls for success. She's already delivered 6, but then she meets Katrina Nguyen, a young transgender runaway, and she may be her final candidate. I've heard people review this book, but I don't actually remember whether their thoughts were positive or negative, but the idea behind it sounds very intriguing. Here's hoping I will enjoy. And then the final stack that I'm just gonna go through, well, no, okay, never mind. This big stack, Josh got me volumes 5 through 10 of Spy Family by Tetsuya Endo, which I've truly been loving. I'm actually currently up to volume 8, so 3 of these are on my red shelves already, whereas these 3 are currently on my TBR. I don't know how you have spent any time on the internet and haven't heard of Spy Family, but it is this family where we are following Twilight, a spy who needs to get close to his mark, but in order to do so, he needs a family, adopts this little girl who turns out to be a telepath, and then he enlists the help of a woman who turns out to be an assassin to be his wife. And it's so much fun. I've had the best time with this series. Josh is probably gonna end up borrowing these from me as well, so I think this gift was as much for him as it was for me. And then finally, for the last book, he got me Soul Eater Volume 8 by 𝗖cie his𝘁, and this is my favorite anime. So I have been reading the manga. I've been working through it kind of slow, but it is on the older side, so I need to actually start prioritizing buying these. I just have to hunt them down. Okay, that was so many books, and oh my god, my throat is parched. For this last little section, we're going to talk about the books that I'm unhauling. So first, like I mentioned previously, Starling House is going to be in that pile. Unfortunately, I also will be unhauling White Horse by Erica T. Worth. This is a horror book that was by an Indigenous author, so I really wanted to enjoy it, but I just did not. The writing was way too slow, was dragging a lot. I didn't really like our main character, and I felt as though the mystery that she is trying to investigate about what happened to her mother, who disappeared 2 days after her birth, unfortunately was getting bogged down by all of the familial trauma that's going on with her cousin and her cousin's husband. It wasn't for me. I'm also going to be unhauling Anne Rule's Small Sacrifices. While I did find this a very interesting read and I was really engrossed, I'm never going to reread it because it's over 400, it's almost 500 pages. And it's a nonfiction true crime book, which are pretty heavy to read one time, let alone multiple times. So this will probably get put into another little free library. Finally, unfortunately, is going to be Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. This is a really weird memoir that rides the line between magical realism with some like abstract art and then Jenny Slate's actual life. It was a ride, but not the most positive ride. So yeah, this will not be staying on my shelves, unfortunately, even though the cover is a lot of fun. So that was so much talking. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for coming to my channel today. If you managed to the end of this video, leave me a book stack emoji in the comments down below. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!